Hey, this is Warren from Honed by Jones, and welcome to the shop. It's a Monday morning here in Carson City, Nevada, and it's time for a long-term belt sander review. So I have three belt sanders that I use in my sharpening service, Honed by Jones, here in Carson City, and one of them is a Buck Tool 1x30 with a bench grinder combo. So they call it their 1x6 bench grinder sander. On this side of the machine, there used to be a grinding wheel with a housing. I took the housing off and I replaced that housing and grinding wheel with an 8-inch leather wheel from Cliff Curry at Curry Custom Cutlery in Hawaii. And that is how I use it. I usually have a belt on this side of the machine and the leather wheel on this side of the machine. Making this machine, if you wanted to purchase this machine and use it for your sharpening service, and you get a leather wheel or a felt wheel and you put it on this side, it's a super easy replacement. At least I found it to be a quick and straightforward replacement. This could be your one machine beginning a sharpening business machine very easily. You get some 120 ceramic belts. You get some 600 grit Trizac belts. You combine it with an 8-inch leather wheel or an 8-inch felt wheel, and you could have an entire sharpening service just with this machine. So that's one of the positives of this machine. I forget the current price, but I think this machine maybe ranges in the 120, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, 160, somewhere in that range of pricing on Amazon. I think it goes up and down throughout the year and changes prices. Buck Tool sold out of these recently. I think they're selling that many of them. So, what do I like about this machine? And what do I not like about this machine long term, now that I've been using it for months? Let me digress for a second and say the way that I use this machine is that I tend to, actually I'm going to move my Kalamazoo over a little bit there so I can lean in here a little bit easier. I tend to use only the leather wheel on this machine, and the 1x30 side of it is a backup. These are my the two Kalamazoo 1x42s. These are my primary belt sanders. I put 120 grit ceramic on the first one. I put 600 grit Trizac on the second machine. And those are the two primary belt sanders that I use in my sharpening business. They're made by Kalamazoo Industries. Okay, but we're going to stick with the Buck Tool for now. So I primarily just use this 8-inch leather wheel. I have this 1x30 here as a backup in case something happens to one of these two machines. That's how I do it. What do I like about this machine? I like the portability. I like the fact that you could have an entire sharpening service in just this one machine. I think that's pretty amazing. I like how easy it is to change the belt. There is a door over here on the left side. So this is the front of the machine here facing towards me. And I'll spin it around too. But there's a door that's quickly and easily opened with this little doodad here at the top that... And honestly, this door quickly and easily opens. I'm going to remove the door completely. And then the belt change, because it's a lever action belt change, is really quick and easy. It is not like if you've ever used the Harbor Freight the Harbor Freight 1x30, where you actually have to pull on the pulley to loosen the belt. This is 100 times easier to use. It's so quick, it's so straightforward, and if you remove this door, because, depending on how you're doing your dust collection or if you're using magnets or whatever you're doing, if you remove this door, that makes the changing of the belt even simpler. I don't have a belt on there right now. So that's a positive. Those are the positives of this machine. Price, versatility, ease of changing belts, actually even ease of changing wheels. It's pretty straightforward. If I'm going to get a felt wheel one of these days, an 8-inch felt wheel, just to compare it to the leather wheel for stropping and deburring, it's not going to be hard at all. I take off this one bolt on the side here, this guy. I just take that off. Hopefully you can see that okay. Sorry, I've got some cord issues. There we go. Now we got everything. I should have gotten a cleaner box to put this on. This one's got some splinters sticking up, makes it harder to move. But I just have to remove this one bolt here in order to change out the leather wheel. Super straightforward, super simple, super easy to do. So yes, that's a big positive about this machine. Price, versatility, ease of use. What don't I like about this machine? I don't, and I almost forgot. Another thing I like about this machine is the platen. Boy, I really should have used a different box for this review, but we'll make it work. Okay, so the platen, if you want to put an angle guide on here, you could just easily slide an angle guide from Cliff Curry or off of Amazon straight onto this machine. You don't have to do any modifications to the platen. You don't have to make any changes to the platen. That is great. Okay, if we lift it up and turn it, we won't catch those splinters. Something I don't love about this machine is something that I love about my Kalamazoos. I don't like the fact that there's housing around the pulleys. I prefer machines like the Kalamazoos that are completely open. It gives you access to sharpen anywhere you want to sharpen. If you're doing different tools that you might need to use the wheel area of the pulley, you can do that. If you want to sharpen on the platen, you can do that. If you want to sharpen on the slack part of the belt, you can do that. I do not like having housing on here. So with this butt tool, I may end up saying hello to this housing with my angle grinder and my Dremel tool with a cutting wheel and seeing how much of this housing I can remove in order to make the pulleys accessible. The only other negative I would have to say about this machine is it doesn't, at least my machine, my particular buck tool, 1x30, 1x6 bench grinder sander, slow speed machine. I should stop hitting the table because I bet that's making the camera shake. The one other thing I don't like about it, and it may just be my machine, is that the pulleys, at least this upper pulley here, so let me expose it so you can see it. This upper pulley here does not like cold weather. I live in Carson City, Nevada. It's right now in December, what is this, December 16th, 17th, I forget what the date is. It's getting down to like 20 degrees at night, and the high during the day is 40. Usually around 40, 45, sometimes as high as 50, but it's pretty cold at night. I do a farmer's market on Sunday mornings. Farmer's market starts at 9 a.m. I'm usually setting up at 8 a.m. It's pretty cold, this farmer's market that I do weekly in Reno. This pulley started to make noise because it did not, whatever grease is in this pulley was not happy with the cold weather. And so I thought there was something wrong with the machine. What I ended up doing was taking the belt off and running just the leather wheel. And when I did that, I figured out that there was nothing wrong with the housing, the motor, any of that. It was this upper pulley was making noise because the grease or the bearings or the combination of whatever did not like cold weather. So if you live somewhere like Alaska, Michigan, I don't know, wherever you live, and you actually sharpen in an unheated garage or something like that, or an unheated workshop or a shed, you may have to figure something out. I'm going to have to try to figure out if I can, it's a sealed bearing, so maybe I'm going to replace the bearing completely with a higher quality bearing or a higher quality wheel and bearing setup from Cliff Curry in Hawaii. That's my current thought on what I'm going to do with that so that I don't have to worry about weather. That's not all year here in Carson City, but that is part of the year here in Carson City. That's something I have to be concerned with. Let me unplug. So that concludes our buck tool 1x30 section of my long-term belt sander reviews. Now I'm going to move this guy over to my other workbench over here. Actually, I'm just going to put it on the floor out of the way. We're going to move the buck tool out of the way. We're going to move the box that the buck tool was sitting on out of the way so that it was in better view of the camera. And then we're going to slide over the Kalamazoo 1x42. I have two of them. They're identical, so we're only going to pay attention to this one because, I don't need to show you two if they're exactly identical. Let me just make sure it's in the frame of the camera. Okay, yep, that looks perfect. So this is the Kalamazoo Industries 1x42. Let me first start off by saying none of these machines are specifically designed for knife sharpening. It's one of the interesting things about becoming a knife sharpener is you realize there are very few powered machines specifically designed for knife sharpening. You've got like the little Worksharp powered machines. I've got a Tormek on my workbench right over there. That's actually started out as a that machine was initially designed for woodworking, and then they added jigs to make it work as a knife sharpening machine, but it was not originally designed for knife sharpening. Now, I know there are other powered knife sharpening machines out there, pull-through stuff. Tormek has some other stuff, and then there's other machines too. But when you start using belt sanders for sharpening, there are not a ton of belt sanders specifically designed for knife sharpening, and this Kalamazoo Industries 1x42 machine is in that category. It's in the category of machines not designed specifically for knife sharpening that people figure out how to use for knife sharpening. For example, in order to use this machine for knife sharpening, I had to modify the platen. The platen is this flat part here that comes on most belt sanders have a platen that is flat, and then you also have the slack part of the belt up here, and you can choose where you want to sharpen or modify whatever metal you're modifying. I had to modify the platen and cut it down so that I could put a angle guide from Curry Custom Cutlery onto this machine. This morning, I spoke to the owner of Kalamazoo Industries, and I told him how cool it would be if they could come up with a platen that was specifically designed to fit these style of angle guides. And he seemed open to the idea. Will they do it? Will they not do it? I don't know. I just had one 10-minute phone conversation, 15-minute phone conversation with the owner of Kalamazoo, kind of talking to him about how us knife sharpeners use these machines, as opposed to how someone in a machine shop or a welding shop might use one of these machines. Okay, pluses and minuses. These machines are really robust. They're really well built. Steven Sharpens from LA Knife Sharpening is the first sharpener I saw on YouTube using one. He said in 4 years of using his machine, nonstop, that guy's a really busy sharpener, he said the only thing that broke was the switch eventually broke, and he had to call up the company and they shipped him out a new switch. Otherwise, I think he's nearing 5 years of using one of these machines almost every day. That guy sharpens a ton of knives, and he's had no issues with his machines besides the switch. I have had the same experience with my Kalamazoo Industries 1x42s. I have had the experience that everything tracks well, everything runs well. They don't seem to care about the weather at all, whether it's cold or hot. They just keep on keeping on. The motor housing doesn't get warm. It runs nice and smooth. I've got nothing but positive things to say about the Kalamazoo 1x42 as a knife sharpening machine. I sharpen on the angle guide. Sometimes I sharpen on the slack part of the belt. I sharpen edge leading. I like all that stuff. What else can I tell you about this machine? Oh, I like that the pulleys are open and the belt is completely exposed. I already mentioned that. And the only thing one of the main things though that I didn't like about the Kalamazoo 1x42 is if you want to change a belt on this machine, you better work out. You better have some strength in you, because you have to loosen. Let me turn it so you can see. There's a knob right here that you have to loosen. And I call this whole unit here the swing arm. And inside this tube I'm not sure you can see that tube. Let me turn it a little bit more. Okay, so inside this tube right here, there's a big old spring. And then this bar stock or round bar, whatever you want to call it, presses down on that spring, and that's what keeps the tension on the belt, and that's what helps with tracking. So to loosen this system so that you can change belts, you have to push down on this whole setup. You loosen this guy first. I'm not going to do it right now. And then you push down on this. The spring that comes stock on here was designed for something other than knife sharpening. It puts a ton of tension on that belt, and fortunately belts can handle a ton of tension. This morning I cut off, so springs are spiral, right? Like so. So this morning I cut off 5 or 6 loops of that spring. No impact on tracking. I may cut off 2 more loops of that spring that's inside this tube here and see if that makes it even a little bit easier to change the belt. and still not have any impact on the tracking. That's the thing I'm going to try to do to see if it works. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if that's going to fail, but that's what I'm going to try. And then I already talked to Kalamazoo about ordering a couple more springs, just in case as I'm reducing the tension, something happens with the tracking, the machine doesn't run right, I can just go back to the stock spring and I'll have to press hard. But other than that issue with me feeling that the spring that comes stock in here is way too strong for what we need for changing belts, and the fact that the platen isn't really designed to hold one of these angle guides, nothing else but positive stuff to say about this machine. It seems very robust. It seems very well built, very smooth, should run for years, knock on wood, should run for years and years and years. So there's my belt sanders review, the pluses and minuses. I was a part-time, very side hustle part-time knife sharpener for about 4.5 years or so, up until May of 2024. And then in 2024, I became a full-time knife sharpener. And so I've been using these machines every week, once a week at a farmer's market, and every week in my home workshop, talking about the buck tool and the Kalamazoo. And so I've had a bunch of experience with them now. I can recommend both of them. I look at the buck tool more as a starter machine, and I look at the Kalamazoo if you're established in your home workshop or a workshop somewhere and you're looking for a little more versatile machine. I look at the Kalamazoo as that machine. And one thing I forgot to say about the Kalamazoo and the buck tool, I didn't even mention why I like the open pulleys as opposed to the housing that's on the buck tool. The reason I like the open pulleys is no matter what belt I put on this machine, it will not rub on any housing. It will run smoothly through this system. So I can get surface conditioning belts, I can get leather belts, I can get felt belts, and they're all gonna fit on this machine because there's no housing in the way, like on the buck tool, to mess with any of those belts. The more I get into knife sharpening, the more I enjoy doing restorations of knives. So I want to have that versatility of having different kinds of belts available to me. There's another option though. There's always options. Don't think there's only one way to do this, okay? So let's bring the buck tool back and talk about the buck tool for a second. I'm gonna put it back on its box here, bring it up off the floor, and I'm gonna put the wheel facing you because there is one other option with the buck tool. Remember how I complained about the housing and said I didn't like the housing on this guy? Well, you could, if you want to, say you want to run felt belts or surface conditioning belts or various different kind of belts on this machine and they don't fit because of the housing, you could just get different wheels. So you could get surface conditioning wheels, you could get felt wheels. There's all kinds of different wheels that will bolt right onto this buck tool, and then you could just run sanding belts for sharpening. You could run sanding belts for sharpening on this side, and you wouldn't have to worry about whether any of those belts would fit within the housing. So once again, this buck tool becomes a machine, especially I think for beginner sharpeners who are just starting their business. It becomes a machine that can do all kinds of work for a very reasonable price. I think compared to some of the other machines out there, this is a really great place to start. This is Warren from Honed by Jones. That's my long-term reviews of the buck tool. Here, I'll turn it towards you so you can see it. My long-term reviews of the buck tool 1x30 combo jobby and the Kalamazoo 1x42s. Stay tuned to my channel if you want more reviews, because now I'm going to do the next 2 videos. I'm going to do 3 videos, probably like once a week or something like that. I'm going to do a long-term review of my Edge Pro Apex and my Edge Pro Bevel Tech. So I'll do a long-term review of both of those machines. Then I will do a long-term review of my Tormek T8, which you can't see that either. That's out of frame. And then I'm going to do a unboxing and first impressions of my new twice as sharp professional model from Wolf Industries that's coming today, tomorrow. I'm not sure. I got to go check the tracking. This is Warren from Honed by Jones. Thanks for hanging out. This was a longer video. Thanks for hanging out. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you've got thoughts on what belt sanders you like to use, how you use your machines, So, did I say subscribe already? Like, comment, subscribe, all those things? All right, this is Warren from Honed by Jones. I'll catch you on the flip side.